money. I mean, Masan Akutia. Say, Obia to your tax, and can your problem? Your direct tax, your indirect tax. Obia rest supermarket, Cotoia, there will be to your tax, and you're not a year.
Better coverage. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Channel MOE. We are live on Channel MOE TV.
Your friend Alexander Nanakoja Sante say ye bar the issue of free SHSR. This is my personal view. I feel say Aban decided say or yeah policy be a free for every Ghanaian. What it means is that you're the Ghanaian taxes and a itia nipaneka. It's number one, my bisa say why na itia tax? Say your head tax brackets na nipa be bring to your tax kakra bi to your tax inti me am a war in the corporate world na me ye adwuma me tua me staff ka me tua me workers no taxes ma or mo tua pay or mo tua income tax or mo tua senate me tua me de adwuma no su tua ne de na se afe ne beso na aban be ka se wo ye hwe wo a obetumi atua school fees for Oba. Into Oba nyine do point obetuma call SHS. Na mum no wankasa hwe Oba. Na obi a sabi mesin bi a oye madwuma ma me. Biti Oba be charge also boss majo 7,000 for futu ama na skani hye no bottom. Ontua tax bia. Sa nipa no me ntua tax no. Na me nsan ko tua me kwhwe me ba school fees. Ba sa nipa no mum no ekoye adwuma na bosume so a afende so na aban na hwe ne ba no free of charge with my money. Na me masan akotua. Say obia to your tax and your problem. Your direct tax, your indirect tax. Obia rest supermarket Cotoia, there obia to your tax, and you're not a year can. Mena bosume so me share that tisika ko to your tax no. Say capital ni bi no share that tisika into your so just so ya kunyama me na shuraka okoya scan ya ne dia. Ontua bi. Ne ya beka so no ni bi. Inti no ono ne banko school free. Na me na me to your tax, yemfa me misika enhwe sa nipa ne ba. I feel say enye fair. Nsa aban se obehwe obi aba de a obi a yem first kan hwe obi aba se aban se onye mo obi a de obi am pesi kan fentua but enye first se me na bitua tax no yem fa me kan hwe obi ba abra ndipa ni ntua tax no bi nti me take on free SHS say so obi a tua tax na ye de hwe obi a no problem but obi ntua na me obi ntua de ye tua tax no ye sika no na ye de be hwe omo ntua tax no de ye ka se oni bi because on tua tax. Oya adwuma obi koton ne ma odwom obi ye nkonwa obi di mate obi ye driver untua tax mo bia one cedi no mbetua for the car no eno ano no to atua tax for the vehicle but no as a person income no wentua like tax bia ntime de me ne obi anya adwen say yenye free SHS no ye ma nipa ni bi ntua me ma nipa ni bi.
Are you coming? 1 minute. Okay, so whilst you set up, let me invite regulatory and accountability system. A round of applause for Madam.
Good afternoon. We looked at the pillar titled Regulatory Systems, Accountability and Governance in Ghana. The team looked at some of the challenges with the current education system infrastructure in Ghana. We concentrated on the basic level, the senior high school level, SHS, and tertiary. The team looked into the policy reforms and came out with the following. On computerization of the school selection system, the following were observed, and I'll also take you through some of the recommendations that was made. In the observations, the team observed that there were interference of connection men protocol systems that influenced the school selection. Exceedingly large number of students allocated to particular institutions, which may not have the requisite infrastructure and resources to accommodate the students. Abuse of the protocol system in the school selection processes, payment of bribes to individuals handling the computerized system, resistance of some students to respond to disciplinary measures because they know they will definitely get into grade A or B schools. Some of the recommendations the team came out with were policy guidance, discussions on the enforcement of cutoff points, as is done in the universities, consideration of students of less endowed schools into higher grade schools, enforcement of cluster of school selections. Computerized system should be reviewed to allow heads of institutions to have an input in the admission quotas vis-a-vis the infrastructure and resources in the schools. We also looked at some indiscipline in the schools, especially the senior high school level. Some of the observations made were no repetition of students, lack of punishment in the basic and high school levels leading to indiscipline, mishandling of textbooks by students, especially at the SHS levels. The following were recommended. Introduction of repetition in the basic SHS, JHS and SHS levels. Students who are repeated will be expected to redeem themselves until they progress to the next level. Students should be sanctioned appropriately for offenses. Students should be surcharged for mishandling government textbooks. We also looked at sensitization of parents on the policy to repeat weak students at the basic, JHS, and senior high school levels. We also tackled strengthening government partnership with faith-based institutions, that's the mission schools. Some of the observations we made was lack of coordination between the mission managers and the education directorates, non-involvement of mission managers in the appointments, transfer of headships in the faith-based schools, appointment of some non-faith-based members to mission schools, and the absence of faith-based managers in governing councils and school boards. The following recommendations were made. Involvement of mission managers in the appointment of faith-based schools and the appointment of headships in faith-based schools. This will elicit the following benefits. Improvements in provision of infrastructure by faith-based groups, that the churches will help build these mission schools. Close supervision and monitoring by mission managers, promotion of core values of mission-based schools. Mission managers should also be communicated to and should make inputs in appointments and transfers of leadership. We also looked at the Pre-Tertiary Education Act 1049. Section 4, subsection 4, and advocates that it should be enforced. Also, the MOU between the Education Directorate and faith-based institutions should be maintained. And clearly defined roles for both faith-based schools and the Education Directorate, especially at the basic levels. We also tackled out-of-school children and came out with the following. The observation was that people who fail to pass their entrance exams and are left stranded at home or in the streets, the necessary actions to take. The following were recommended. Strict adherence to the Complementary Education Act 20 Act 1055 subsection 3A, 3B, and 3C. Government to invest in policies that will engage out-of-school children by fully implementing the Act. Introduction of enhanced skill training for out-of-school children. On the double-track system in senior high schools, the following were observed. The burden on non-teaching staff, while the mainstream teachers are out of schools to give way to the other, either red or green, the non-teaching staff are always at post. The use of outmoded methods of cooking in the pantries, leading to serious health conditions for cooks and other kitchen staff. No leave period for non-teaching staff amid the double-track system. The following were recommended. Recruitment of staff, empowerment of heads of institutions to conduct recruitment exercises, especially at the basic and senior high school levels. We also looked at examination malpractices and came out with these recommendations. Activation of the Professional Misconduct Act for teachers who assist students to cheat or engage in examination malpractices. The period of BEC examination period was to be revised to 1 paper per day to create more room to enable students revise. Regulations should be set out to punish students or teachers who engage in examination malpractices. The other issues the team considered was insubordination of some students, lack of promotion of staff in the basic JHS and SHS levels, reforms to improve staff progression, revamping the policy on creating early childhood centers to enable parents with young children go to work. Policy regulation to include students' leaders in the decision making, especially at the senior high school levels. PTA, active involvement of teachers in the Parent-Teacher Association, and timely supply of textbooks for all students at the various levels. Prohibition of students from skipping class levels to write entrance exams like BEC and WASI. At the tertiary level, the team looked at the following. On governance and policy reforms, there's challenges associated with effective performance of governing councils. The following were recommended. Government appointees to be neutral. Government appointees to know their purpose of appointments. Council should be given autonomy to operate. Council should be allowed to perform their duties without any form of interference from government. On strengthening oversight of responsibilities of governing councils, the following were recommended. Council must ensure that strategic plans are adhered to. Councils to engage in convocation with their council to engage convocation in their reporting systems, and management to present regular reports to councils. On policy reforms, the following were recommended. Sections of GTEC must be reviewed to conform with the Universities Act. Key performance indicators must be developed to assess government appointments in councils, and review of the Education Regulatory Act. The team also looked at quality assurance and came out with the following recommendations. that faculty members must have basic training in pedagogy and manage the student to lecturer ratio. Government should also be intentional in the provision of human resource to improve the student lecturer ratio. There should also be a comprehensive policy aimed at providing teaching and learning materials to support teaching and learning in tertiary institutions. GTech should enforce standards, especially when it comes to staff-student ratio, by being mindful of IGF components. On the role of stakeholders, the following were recommended. There should be a review of the PPA arrangements in various higher educational institutions to attract private investors. In design professional programs, 2 components should be taken into consideration. That's the academic and professional components. And this is the end of our highlights. Thank you.
Oh, let's do it better for regulatory. They've done well by identifying the challenges, giving us recommendations, letting us know the role of stakeholders and all of that. Let's give it up for her once again. Now education financing is ready. So a round of applause as Dr. Nsiao and Godson come up stage.
I'm going. Yes, thank you very much. We look at educational financing, and then the key areas, the funding challenges. Look at the funding challenges. Now the first question was the funding challenges. What are the funding challenges? So the team came up with some of the challenges which is going on. Inadequate fund from the government, that the government funding is inadequate and is always in arrears, which is an issue now. And that brought down to budgetary allocation, because the government budget allocation to education sector, though we know that there are a lot of competing needs. So the government allocation, though, as explained, the quantum is big, but it's not enough in funding the education in the country. And if you look at the standard of living or the income level of the parents also, in Ghana here, very low, that most parents cannot afford supporting their students, especially even in tertiary level. As for the basic and then the SHS, we know it's free. But when it gets to the university, tertiary, it's free to some extent. Government support to some extent, but even without one, the accommodation and the rest, we've seen that one to be challenged there. And then there's a lack of contribution from stakeholders. That is also fueling the funding challenges at the PTA, the community leaders, and so on in supporting the education. So the team looked at these challenges and recommended that yes, there should be budgetary allocation for practical training, in particular the private TVET schools. Though the government allocation is not sufficient, but we realize that the private TVET schools are mostly affected. The basic equipment that they should use, they don't have, so they will come out as theoretical TVET graduates. So there should be a conscious effort to allocate funds for such activity. And then we should develop income-generating activity support schools. These TVET schools and tertiary institutions, there should also be some way of commercializing the products and then to sell, because the TVET schools, those in mechanical side and then the carpentry side, their output, you should commercialize them, and we should create a market for them The government institution, if you need tables and chairs, and they have a TVET school producing these tables and chairs, we should utilize this facility at least. It will create funds for them and also give them more money to do. And then contribution from stakeholders, the alumni, the PTA, at the basic level, that the alumni, because you know that at the basic level, the alumni are not working, but the PTAs will support. So we encourage that should be reintroduced. Then the effect of inadequate financing on quality education. You realize that it's obvious. All the answers that you got from question 1, from this one, more than 10 people said that if financing is inadequate, then quality will be compromised. And you will see the high student-teacher ratio and so on and so forth. The quality will be compromised. And then the logistics for practical training will also be severely affected when it comes to the effect of inadequate financing. And we also discussed from the group that poor remuneration of teachers. Though this has some ripple consequence effect on the quality, the poor remuneration of teachers and staff leading to demotivation also affect the quality. So it means if there's not adequate financing, it will by all means get to the demotivation and then the quality here. And then some of the students who will come out, or the graduates, we use this word, but we put it in inverted commas, that some will come out as half-baked graduates and professionals and so on. And especially in the health training sector, the nursing, the doctors, and all the health training chain, if we don't have enough funds to train them, then our health or our future is at risk. And it will also lead to insufficient teaching and learning materials. And that one also affect the quality. So that is the quality side. And how we can optimize the government funding to ensure that we have adequate financing across. One, the team came out that government should focus on major components of free SHS cost items. The fees itself and so on, and leave expenses such as uniform, sandals, etc. You put etc. there, maybe the others can put that, can fill in that, etc. And for the parents, that's the burden sharing. So the parents should be brought in to provide some of this basic one to relieve the government. And then ensure proper supervision and monitoring to minimize misappropriation. The letter that is going, we should also supervise and monitor well. And then the donor funding for school programs, we realize that it is not harmonized. So the government should harmonize the donor funding for school programs. You realize that one NGO is funding this one in Bumprugu. This another NGO, another agent also go there doing the same thing. We should be that coordination and harmonization. And the members are also of the view that the government should reintroduce state farming to provide food to feed the SHS. And then there should also be equity in distribution of funds to the free secondary, to all the secondary schools. And before the funds are distributed, there should be needs assessment. The government should conduct needs assessment because the need for this district and that district may not be the same in the allocation of resources. Then we came to innovative financing model. How can we harness innovative financing to help with the education financing? One that came out with the production activities should be encouraged, yes, I said, at the TVET level and they commercialize to generate RGF. And members also suggested rebranding of some taxes and levies. And here, members are of the view that a tax such as COVID-19 can be made as free SHS levy or education levy with the resources channeled to this educational sector. Then, with the GET fund, we realize that the GET fund, those on infrastructure, but mostly focused on tertiary, there should be a clear percentage allocation of GET fund for pre-tertiary education funding. And the private sector and donor support, how we can encourage. The group came out that we should allow private schools to be on a computerized placement system, where students can also select private schools. And then the government should support every student, either private or public, with a grant. So there should be an allocation. So if the allocation is X amount per student, then if a school is at more than the government school, then the parents can top up at that private school, and that also can ease the burden on the government. And then we should encourage religious bodies and faith institutions to contribute to education financing, because they've done it before and they will know they can do it. And the SOEs, we should encourage them to have a line item in their annual budget for education financing. Some of the SOEs we know are very resourceful, like that there's at least something small for education financing. And the mechanism that should be put in place to address the funding gap in education, particularly the free SHS. So a grade A school, there should be a quota for free, and then some should be non-free. And then we should bring back the PTA contribution to education. The contribution can be the dues and then the rest. And then involve the private sector to support with their CSR to help the institution. And then school also should introduce the school farming. While government is bringing the farming, schools also introduce school farming. And then the free SHS should be free for all students on day schools, and the boarding schools, all those going for the boarding should be made to pay something. But the amount was not indicated here anyway. And the government can also consider diaspora bond as a way of financing the education. To ensure transparency and accountability, all payments should be accounted for before the next tranche, payment release, when next tranche is given. And we should adhere to the financial regulations of the PFM Act and make sure that all the schools, especially the primary and secondary level, proper records are kept, auditing, and then monitoring and evaluation. And then for award of contracts, so there should be a transparency. And those who misappropriate, there should be appropriate sanction. And the last one, equity and inclusion, we discussed that there should be a participatory budget from the bottom up, from the school up to the top, and then there should be a school mapping and needs assessment to address inequality. And the quota systems in allocation of resources should also be introduced. And there should be accurate and timely management of data systems so that we know all the schools, all the students in each schools before resources are allocated. And that one will reduce waste and then ensure that the money is going to the right direction. And percentage from the export of cash crops. They say cocoa farm, cocoa, cashew, and the rest, and there should be maybe small percentage going into education. So this is from the education financing team. Thank you.
Let's do it better for Doc. Great presentation there, and we appreciate all the contributions. We've taken note of them, and surely you'll see the outcome. So the next group would be, which group? Infrastructure, yes. A round of applause for infrastructure group. The lunch will be in very soon. Let's do it better for them.
All right, good afternoon. So we are from the infrastructure group, and we decided that the last point, that is inclusion, is very important. So all the areas that we looked at, we inculcated the inclusion as part of the guiding questions. So first, we looked at the challenges. What are the present infrastructure gaps in basic, secondary, and tertiary education? So here we focus on the rural, urban, and then the peri-urban areas. And we identify that most schools don't have KG blocks. We identified most facilities are not disability friendly, inadequate health and safety infrastructure like sick bays, smoke detectors, fire alarms, among others. Inadequate workshops, classrooms, especially at TVET institutions. And then the few available ones are very ill equipped. We also considered inadequate funding, and then lack of proper ICT setup, including fiber optic infrastructure, the absence of an ICT plan or policy to govern the use of ICTs, high cost of internet due to inadequate fiber optic facilities, limited technical expertise, especially with the ICT users. And all these, we made these recommendations. So first, we recommend that government should prioritize the building of classrooms, workshops, e-learning centers, dormitories, mobile labs, among other things. And then enforcing the disability laws. Occupational health safety should be incorporated in the design of educational infrastructure. The need to produce adequate quality and appropriate furniture for various sectors. We also recommend that educational facilities should be very disability friendly. And then engaging in green initiatives. So here we consider the fact that sustainable practices should be incorporated in educational maintenance. And then on the digital level, we say that due to the inadequate of such facilities, we can consider starting from the regional, we move to the municipal, the district, and then it comes to the schools. Compulsory learning of ICT at all levels, and then private sector engagement. And here, when we get to the PPP, we will highlight more on this. We also recommend a strategic plan for operationalizing ICT in the all levels where we use the ICTs. Budgetary allocations, I've talked about it. Managing the internet infrastructure, flexible infrastructure models, introduce the hybrid system, that is blended learning approach. So here in the classroom, we have the manual activities where the teacher faces the students. We should go blended, where we replenish classroom activities with digital and online teaching practices. When it comes to furniture, we recommend that there should be decentralization of furniture production and distribution by partnering with local producers. We feel that it doesn't make sense to always bring the furniture from the regional to the various school levels. There are community players that we can partner with. And again, we can also collaborate with the Forestry Commission and then TVET institutions, because these institutions, these are the things that they do. So if we make them producers of these infrastructure, furniture, it will help. And then one head from the senior high school suggested that they have afforestation, they have trees in the school, they started a long time ago, it's grown. So now they just cut one, get timber to produce furniture, so we can replicate it, start the afforestation. By 20 years time, we have so much timber that we can use to make furniture. The MMDAs should also prioritize the distribution of furniture. International collaboration, so we feel that there should be twin city initiatives in the production of infrastructure. What innovative ways can we use to produce furniture at low cost? So here we've mentioned the collaboration with afforestation and other things. We've dealt with that. And then how can digital infrastructure be prioritized? So we say that traditionally the focus has always been in the tertiary and even to some extent in the senior high school, but the KGs, primary school, GHS are always left behind, and therefore there should be a conscious effort to include them. Internet e-learning centers with no internet connectivity, we recommend that we should have a holistic look at this with the introduction of smart board, e-libraries, electronic resources like textbooks, and then robotic labs. And there should be private partnership in the provision of e-learning centers. Public-private partnership, what role can they play? Provision of financial resources, expertise and innovation, technology transfer, and then build, operate, transfer. So here we consider the fact that when it comes to this model, build, operate, transfer, they usually like the urban centers, tertiary institutions. If you ask somebody to go to the village to build an infrastructure, what is the incentive? So we consider the fact that whilst these companies are giving tertiary institutions like, for example, KNUST to build accommodation, they should be made to choose a rural community to build an infrastructure there. So whilst they are recouping their proceeds from the urban, it also takes care of the rural areas. And this is the model that we have recommended. Tax exemptions, reductions with lower, we reduce the interest rate for private companies who want to invest in the rural communities. And again, if somebody comes to build an infrastructure, we should give the naming right to the company. So you put your name on it. Ada Sankroma Robotic Lab, as an example. Reconstituting PTA was also recommended. Leveraging on local customary resources, like when somebody comes to build an infrastructure, there is a quarry site, sand site, we should also give them the incentive to use these. And then corporate social responsibilities, we should liaise with NGOs, religious bodies, companies to consider their corporate social responsibilities in building infrastructure. Special interest rate for developers with special concentration on rural areas. Sustainability, we've talked about it in our earlier recommendation where we said we should engage in green initiatives. The use of clay as an example, implement energy efficient lighting systems, install water saving fixtures, promote recycling programs. Yes. Maintenance, apart from the issues that were discussed, this is the recommendation, a matter of time. Formulation of comprehensive maintenance policy for educational institutions with dedicated maintenance budget. Appointment of estate officers. So when we look at our institution, it's hard to find somebody who is really in charge of maintenance. So as part of the policy, there should be estate officers. And then scheduled maintenance. There should be routine maintenance for infrastructure. Yes. Yes, and so all our discussion focuses on the KG, the primary, the SHS, TVET, and then the tertiary institutions. The other recommendations will be made available to the committee. Thank you very much. We are done.
Thank you so much, sir. So the next group would be evidence for decision making. Quality will be last. A round of applause for them. Evidence for decision making. Professor Humphrey is coming. Professor Humphrey Danso.
Good afternoon to you all. So our team was tasked to look at issues concerning research evidence for decision making. So that was our breakout group. Our work was put into 5 thematic areas. And the first one is effective decision making. And with effective decision making, we had the first question, that was, how can data be effectively managed to improve school placement system? So our workable recommendations include to collect data to provide guidance in school selection. We believe that there should be adequate data for the system to run effectively. And there should be orientation in the basic schools, that's the junior high schools, to sensitize students before choosing programs of interest. We also suggested that we should have a national policy in terms of job, the focus of the country in terms of the jobs that we prefer our students to go into. And therefore, we make our schools to run programs in those areas, especially TVET, so that we can push more students into such areas for them to be selected for programs in those areas, to be trained in the areas that at the end of their training, they become very productive and useful for the country. We also suggested that we should set up quota systems to minimize people and we should set up quota system to marginalize people and also remote and under-resourced schools and ensure inclusivity and equity. So those schools that are not well resourced, we should give the students some kind of quota to be able to also have access to some of the first class or grade A schools. Protocol systems for school placement system should be revised. There are a lot of issues with the protocol system and the whole system of the school placement and the protocol allocation and other things. We recommended that something should be done. The second question is, what are the current gaps in data indicators and management of data? Our workable recommendations are: 1, storage of data, that is, system for storing data as it is now currently is inadequate and is inaccurate, and therefore we are recommended that we should have adequate and accurate data systems to support our data management systems in the educational sector. Digitalization of data. We also recommended that we should use digital data tools in data collection and dissemination instead of manual systems of collecting data. Then data protection. We also recommended that data should be well protected, especially for personal data, so that people will not have access to use them wrongly. We also recommended synchronization of data, that data should be networked in such that if GS has data about their teachers and the Ministry of Education need that data, or Ghana National Teaching Council needs that data, they can easily get access to it, instead of every agency collecting data separately, which normally creates some kind of uncomfortable situation for our members. Quality data gathering, we also emphasize that there's the need to ensure that the data we are collecting are of high quality. There are some information, someone shared example that they came for some data and they were asking of the hometown house number. She herself have not been in the hometown for very long. She has not lived there. How can she get the house number of the hometown? So we should have a means of collecting the quality data. And the next question is, how can the information and data management system for Ministry of Education, Ghana Education Service and others be improved to ensure comprehensive credibility and relevance for policy management? And our recommendations were that, one, we should have a continuous update of existing data. If we have data, we don't have to throw it away. Let's continue to update them so that they can continue to be useful for us. Ease of access. Data should be easily accessible by agencies and other organizations that need them. Then there should be a channel to review data and address concerns for improvement. Sometimes when you collect or get some data, you realize that there are some inadequate or inconsistent issues, information. So in that situation, we need to have some channel to share our concern through, so that the data that are quite wrong could be corrected. The second thematic area happened to be inclusiveness or inclusivity. And the question is, how can real-time data be used to address disparity in education? And our recommendations are, one, there must be a partnership or collaboration in institutions to clarify and reduce disparities in data. Sometimes you go to this agency, the data they give to you, the same data, you go to another agency and they are not the same. So why can't we just collaborate and work together to make sure that we have almost the same data? Establish a digital platform to enable real-time interaction and input about identified concern. So if we have a platform for real-time collection of data, it will also be very helpful. The fifth question is, in what ways can GES, TVET, teachers and etc. leverage data to enhance teaching, learning and management of our education system? So we recommended that we should gather feedback for improvement. Example, we can use Google Forms and other easy means of collecting data. Then we also recommend that there should be tracer studies. We should conduct tracer studies, especially with students who have graduated, to get more information to improve the system, our education system. Then curriculum development. We also recommended that we should develop curriculum that is fit for purpose. Then set up data repositories. So we should ensure that data repository systems are put in place. The next question is, how can education data be more accessible for stakeholders to enhance policy accountability? And we recommended the following, that we should collect and store digitized data. The data that we have, we should, if they are printed based, let's turn them into digital data and store them. There should be a platform for easy accessibility of data. We should also provide platform to publish data. Some data could be published. We realize that some organizations, World Bank and others, they publish their data, and when you need it, you can easily get them. Sometimes data concerning education issues are kept somewhere, and when we even need them, it's very difficult to access them. And we should also have open access data. Most of our data, as much as possible, let's make it open access so that people can have access to them. Then the next is on research and development. The next thematic area, research and development. So the question is, how can the proposed National Research Fund be operationalized? So government have the idea to establish a national research fund. You go to most countries, these national research funds are there. And how can we operationalize that if government establishes it? So we made the following recommendation: that one, framework to provide modalities for implementation should be developed. We should have a policy guideline as to how the National Education Fund should be created. Then a supervisory committee should be constituted to peruse the research findings, and I mean they should have a committee to ensure that the research activities or the applications and the processes are followed as it's supposed to be. And there should be a policy framework to regulate the research fund administration. So people even suggested that it should be decentralized, maybe at a regional basis or some zonal basis, so that its administration can be nationwide, and it will not be centered or placed only in Accra. Someone to move from WA to Accra to go and apply and go through processes, come for interview and all those things, and so that we can reduce those issues and create a body to be responsible for the operationalization of the fund. That's consider those at the lower level, include students, specific demographic, and people with disability and others. Then marginalized people should all be considered. Then what sources can we get the funding from? So the sources, we suggested that one, government should be one of the key sponsors or sources for providing funds for the educational national research fund. We also looked at issues like NGOs. We looked at issues like, that is, industries, organizations. If when you go to China, for instance, to be able to operate in a country, the law, there's a policy that says that you should contribute to research fund, and until you do that, you will not be allowed. And they all, by policy, are contributing to their national research fund. So we are also suggesting that, and we also suggested that if possible, there should be some segregation in terms of the fund, considering those at the tertiary, those at the pre-tertiary, considering those at the industry and other sectors who can be beneficiary of that fund, so that at the end it doesn't become like it's only the academia who are maybe accessing the fund. Even primary students, if they have some idea that are workable, we should create ways for them to source the funding. And our last but not the least question: how can it be operated to ensure equity? That's the fund. And our suggestions are that there should be a grant management and system for monitoring and evaluation. The funding should be decentralized. I've mentioned that earlier. There should be a regulatory body to monitor the whole fund, and submission of progress reports to the necessary body, that the Minister of Education and others, to ensure that things are done. How can research institutions support government educational reform agenda? That is, bring out the major problem. That is, the research institutions can research to identify the key issues that are involved, so that they can make the government aware of such issues. The institution can also depend on tracer studies, follow up on alumni bodies to also get more information to improve the system, and formation of research units in research training institutions and others to also contribute to knowledge and provide more information about research funding. We also talked about establishment of innovative hubs who also conduct more research and bring out some innovative solutions to make the funding very lucrative. So thank you very much. That's the points our group made.
Thank you so much, Prof. And so the last group, quality, I don't know whether will you do a group presentation or we'll still have DDG? Are we having it in one? I mean, they have secondary, the tertiary, and one. Okay. All right. So quality rep from, okay. Please, he's coming, so let's show him some love. A round of applause for him as he gets upstage here.
Okay. Coming to join me. Greetings to you all, everyone. I'm representing quality, and we went through a few items I want to share with you at this moment. We are going to focus on the recommendations made. There have been some challenges, but we will be talking about the recommendations. How can marginalized groups, girls, children with disabilities, rural population be better included? And the first item here is that there's need to provide digital career counseling platforms for students so they can make the right career choices. There is also the need to provide scholarships and bursaries for our students, the children. We are given the recommendations for all the levels, KG, primary, JHS, senior high, and the tertiary. And then there's another one. There should be disability-friendly buildings and logistics for those who have challenges. For example, providing wheelchairs, making them available. There should be provision of proper sanitation facilities and resources like pads for girls who may stay away from school. We have some who are already, who have pad banks, for example, and we think this is something that should be taken up so that the girls may not stay away from school. And also, there should be sped training for teachers to be able to cater for learners with disabilities. And then there is the need to recognize the efforts of some NGOs who have been assisting in supporting education in the country. This recognition will give them the motivation to do more, and this will help with children going to school. There is also the need to enforce anti-discrimination laws regarding learners with various needs. We also need to contextualize our curriculum. There's the need to have a mandatory national policy on the need to have accessible facilities that benefit our various learners at the various levels. There should also be assistive technology, for example, speech-to-text software and hearing aids to aid learning. If we are talking about merging all learners in one classroom, such things should be available for those who may need them. School categorization, another point, school categorization should be taken off and replaced with cutoff points for the graduates so that finding schools will not be based on the category in which your school is. The next point, learners in deprived areas should be supported with means of transportation so they can attend the schools within their areas. We should also reconsider the quota system and allow students to attend school from home instead of depriving them because the school may not be able to take more. We have to encourage virtual studies so students can access education irrespective of location. We are talking about access and quality education. Encouraging virtual studies so students, irrespective of their location, will have access to education, especially in remote areas. We have to improve awareness of the educational opportunities through national awareness campaigns led by the Ministry of Education. We also have to provide Wi-Fi facilities in all schools so the children can have access to education. There should be community learning centers, especially in rural areas. ICT resource centers that are freely accessible to all learners should be made available. And then the government should consolidate existing campuses and not open new ones, but focus on improving the existing ones. And then the last item under access is that students from less endowed schools should be given a quota in the universities. So accessibility will fairly be for all categories of our students. Then the second item, teacher quality. Teacher quality. How can teachers be motivated and retained? How can we improve teacher motivation and retention? We have to provide our teachers with competitive remuneration and allowances. We also have to improve their working conditions. There should be recognition for teachers, especially those who have served for many years, long-serving teachers. Teachers will be motivated if they have the opportunity to participate in decision-making. So school leaders will have to be encouraged to involve teachers in decision-making. There's a need to encourage some form of discipline in schools, and for some teachers, per experience, they will be motivated when this is encouraged, or there is some form of discipline in schools. At the university level, it is recommended that at the end of the 6-month probation, new lecturers should be made to go through pedagogical assessment, some teaching methodologies. And at the TVET level, qualified TVET teachers should be remunerated appropriately. Also, we recommend that basic salary should be improved, that the government will have to stop taxing the 25% on emoluments, and also government's contribution to pension should increase. These are things we believe will help motivate and retain our teachers. On curriculum, the third item, on curriculum. How can the curriculum better integrate STEM, AI, 21st century skills, and relevant cultural values? And we recommend that we should design curriculum focused on real-world problem solving. Also, teacher training curriculum should be standardized. It should also be inclusive, such that it will capture relevant areas that will help them teach all learners. There should be collaboration with industry stakeholders in the development of our curriculum at all levels. There should also be continuous assessment of our curriculum to determine the effectiveness of the curriculum. Also, we felt that our curriculum is overloaded, and so we recommend that the course load should be reduced so our children, our students, will have enough time to study. TVET qualification framework should focus on providing the learners with proficiency level courses for practical competencies. And also, it's recommended that we provide solar-dependent ICT tools for all learners in all schools. Assessment, again, at the formative years should move from exam-centered to doing tasks. And then it's recommended that we integrate AI and cultural-specific 21st century skills. For university colleges, there should be a course on textbook writing for teacher trainees to develop content for publishers and not someone else developing it for them. And then we jumped to the fifth item, school leadership. What can be done to enhance effective school leadership performance? Standard support system, monitoring and supervision, clearly defined KPI, less external interference, and the rest. One, there should be periodic capacity building training for leaders and head teachers. We need to appraise the performance of our school leaders. We need to train our school leaders in standard operating laws, for example, labor laws, procurement laws, and the rest. We have to find a way to improve the working conditions of our school leaders. School leaders should be empowered without any form of interference. And the leaders should be trained to learn to know how to delegate duties where necessary, so they will not be overburdened. There should be decentralization such that the head teacher or the school leader will have the autonomy to act without any interference. And finally, there should be provision of adequate resources for our school leaders. So these are the recommendations. The rest will be added when we are submitting the documents. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think we all deserve a big round of applause. Appreciate your own self. It is not easy to be seated for that long hours. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we bring this regional forum to a close, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for your active participation, thoughtful contributions, and unwavering commitment to transforming Ghana's education sector. Today, we have taken a significant step towards shaping a brighter future for our children and youth. The recommendations and outcomes from our deliberations will indeed inform policy decisions, guide interventions, and inspire innovations that will propel our education system forward. We bring today's session to a close and would have a closing prayer. But, okay, Didi wants to come in. Quick one.
Sorry. I'm making this short announcement. From here, after the closing prayer, we will go back into our smaller groups where we had the discussions. A group will visit you. We invited groups, various groups, and then we also have observers here. As Cassandra is thanking all of us, we would like to say God bless you, especially those that came as observers. Those that supported us during the discussion, they came there with a sheet for us to write. During the discussion at that level, they are coming back with a sheet to say thank you. If you were not at that point and you were not captured, God bless you. If you were, oh, that is for purposes of this. So we are going back to our various groups because they will strictly go by the registration we picked there. I want to thank you so much.
Close us with a prayer. Okay, so may I kindly come downstairs for the Islamic prayer so that we will close today's session. In no particular order, I have 3. So please shall we rise so we close today's session, and then we go back to our smaller groups for our people to come and say thank you.
We thank Almighty.
We shall overcome. Let's sing after the prayer, then we disperse. I'm thinking for one nationalistic song, we shall overcome. After the prayer.
Oh, okay, after the prayer.
Okay, we thank Almighty Allah for bringing us to the end of this important forum, and we are praying that may Almighty Allah guide us through the implementation of all that has been discussed and contributed. And I say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim Malik Yawm Ad-Din Iyaka Na'budu wa Iyaka Nasta'in اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. اللهم اجعل بلدنا غانا بلدا مطمئنا، اللهم اجعل بلدنا غانا بلدا آمنا مطمئنا، وانصر رئيسنا وكل من في حكمته برحمة منك يا رحمن الرحيم، برحمتك منك يا رحمن. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Amen.
Amen. Yes, we have done that. All right, so thank you so much for coming, and may the good Lord grant us all traveling mercies. Please, let's go back to our smaller groups for the divine visitation. Dr. Apre has requested for a national song, so I don't know which one. Oma Overcome, please. We shall overcome.
The school level, nobody is assigned to work on it. So we are encouraging that government should centralize the provision of these or furniture or even their repairs to local artisans. Conveniently in the form of compound houses, mechanized water, especially in our rural areas, because those are the most pressing challenges that we have in our rural areas that are making teachers to absent themselves from schools accommodation. The next thing we are saying is that government should focus on providing existing and new schools with green energy sources like solar energy and to ensure continuous use of ICT gadgets. We are preaching, or we are demanding that students be provided with ICT gadgets like tablets and all that. Now, if they are provided with these gadgets, ICT labs, and we cannot have power to assist them to use these gadgets, then they will be useless at a point. So government should collaborate more effectively with traditional authorities in communities to enhance school infrastructure development, particularly in rural areas. We know that our traditional leaders at some point are left out even in our infrastructure construction. So we are recommending that because the schools are built in communities that already have leaders, we know even before the coming of the Western form of rulership, our traditional rulers were the people who were taking care of everything. And so we recommend that they should be part and parcel of the system where they would assist in ensuring that these facilities are provided for the schools by the community. We're here. Okay. Systems should be put in place to provide schools with virtual labs that would inherently reduce infrastructure-related costs and increase access. We understand that the mode of learning nowadays is more or less done virtually. So government should collaborate, or systems should be put in place, to ensure that we have virtual labs that will ensure that our students have access to material in the form of PDFs and others. And then when they are given these tablets, they can access these materials easily to their benefit. Government should prioritize facilities such as dormitories. Government should prioritize facilities such as dormitories, libraries, changing rooms for our ladies, sanitary resources, laboratories, teachers' accommodation, and administrative blocks for all school infrastructure planning. When we come to PPPs in infrastructure development, that is private-public partnership in infrastructure development. One, non-governmental organizations with the mandate should be given room to cater for some infrastructure courses, such as provision of teaching and learning materials and provision of furniture. We should also leverage on the efficiency and expertise of the private sector industry players to carry out effective trainings in TVET schools. The government should streamline public-private partnership arrangements in order to allow private schools to cater for the growing number of learners in government schools. Government should provide incentives to the private sector entities who are into educational infrastructure projects in the form of tax waivers, for example. Government should also utilize PPPs to construct modern school infrastructure for all schools. Government should make provision for regional TVET offices to be provided to cater for infrastructural deficits in the TVET sector. On the part of special needs, we recommend that we should try to integrate special education learners into school infrastructure planning, and that's their needs, and enhance accessibility for learners with special needs. Government should make intentional or deliberate efforts to provide employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. In the aspect of laboratories and workshops for TVET, we recommend that we should provide TVET schools with the needed workshops to undertake practical sessions. Government should provide technical schools with workshops and necessary materials to facilitate practical training. And all schools should have production units reinstated to cater for all infrastructure repairs and maintenance. For STEM infrastructure, government should regulate AI use in schools. The use of AI, government should regulate it in our schools because it causes more harm. Platform, a central place on such as a virtual school in the form of a platform, serving as the administration for both the learner, the teacher, and any authority relevant, and as well as the sponsors to use. That's the STEM infrastructure. ICT infrastructure. Government should have a clear plan or policy for the provision and use of ICT infrastructure in our schools. We have eco-friendly infrastructure. Government should regulate and standardize the design of all school infrastructure. They should integrate environmental considerations into school infrastructure planning to improve our eco-friendliness, sustainability, and easy maintenance. I think these are but some of
thank you very much.
That we made. Thank you so much.
Quickly, we shall be taking three questions. Yes, please, your questions should be very brief. Please, kindly send the microphone to this side.
Maintenance culture, that any authority that do not take good care of their infrastructure, the leader of that authority, institution, should be held responsible. If we cultivate the habit of maintenance culture, repairing the items before they deteriorate I think the furniture will be kept long on the infrastructure. Then, logs that are seized by Forestry Reserve and others should be channeled right away to TVS schools to produce furniture for the schools. By so doing, I think we'll keep our TVS schools up and doing and functioning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Felicia. Mine is a suggestion. You kept mentioning infrastructure that has to do with the schools. But there are other infrastructures as far as the team is concerned that is in the education sector, which has to do with the district education offices. Some district education offices, they don't have befitting places to really do their work in terms of monitoring. And so if you have good schools infrastructure and then the district education offices,
And the
we
regional
don't have
education
proper.
office too.
I'm talking about my district. And then my second suggestion has to do with the kitchens. The kitchens at the senior high schools. Can we also suggest that government provide eco-friendly and healthier places for the kitchen staff to also carry out their work? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Can we
much.
take the last one, then we move on.
Okay, I'm sure the way people are struggling to talk it makes the thing very interesting. Thank you. Two things, and very brief. One is to question one of your recommendations when you mentioned building compound houses. And I thought that it is good, but rather building flats would make maximum use of land. That's one. Two is, throughout the conversation, I didn't hear you mention anything about Get Fund. I know probably you suspect financing will talk about it.
Exactly.
But I thought that this team would have begun to acknowledge the role of Get Fund in providing infrastructure. It doesn't matter whether it's financing or actually going to construct. So probably you may have to roll down the discussion from that aspect, and that will make your discussion flow very
Thank you very much. I think we shall be moving on. Please, if you have any concerns, kindly put it down so that we can take that.
Yeah.
The team will have a flight to catch up with flights.
Thank you very much. Two quick ones. Your challenges that are leading us to make these recommendations, I think we'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Point noted. Please, we humbly invite group 3.
I think we want to. We might want us. Thank. Okay.
They are miniature factories in their institutions to help have the students get some entrepreneurial skills to be able to go out there and do business. But you limit it to only maintenance, and that is what I don't want us to communicate out there.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Let's give it up to group 1 for their presentation.
Thank you so much.
Group 3, please kindly come and take the microphone.
It's an important one, and we thought that it should continue, but it should continue and be more effective. Then it can also keep the unnecessary usage of mobile phones by students in schools to do other things instead of learning. Another layer we looked at was quality assurance. We said or indicated that we should set stringent guidelines to limit political interference in teacher postings and deployment. And we also talked about right qualification as teachers across all levels, and then also enhancing district education directives to enhance CISO supervision that will ensure that performance at the school level is realized. On special education, we said we should ensure the full implementation of the inclusive education policy to give meaning to the special needs student. Then we also look at strengthening teacher capacity and to tighten the regulations around. We've also talked about private senior high schools and how we should tighten regulations to curtail compromise academic results. Teacher deployment and rationalization policy, we thought that this centralization of the teacher postings, now a lot of education directors are here, at the district level they don't have any power, they just sit and then teachers are posted from their headquarters and they have no say in what they do. We also indicated that in order to ensure quality, we should ensure that at least around our schools we are able to cover the syllabus that have been given to us so that students can be prepared before they take their exam. Then mainstreaming some aspects of TVET across our schools to ensure that students learn hands-on practical skills in the school. Another layer we looked at was stakeholder roles. We recognize or underscore the importance of SMCs and PTA, school management committees, and parent association. It was heartwarming to learn from the new minister that PTAs are coming back to take their rightful positions so that they can support the school leadership to ensure that performance is realized in the schools. Also, we have indicated the role of district education oversight committees and how they should be strengthened alongside the district assembly subcommittees in charge of social services to ensure that more efforts is put in implementing the district level education plans. We have spoken largely also about the role of the communities, dovetailing that you have the PTAs and the SMCs. Also the role of the private sector participation, recognizing it's been said all over the mismatch between what is taught in school and what the job market needs. So we thought that private sector should have a critical role in discussing with the schools so they can ensure that the curriculum is fit for purpose. Then of course CSUs and development partners participation in ensuring that there's capacity enhancement at our school levels and also resource contribution from the level. Then we've looked at governance and we're situating our discussion in the context of councils, boards and SMCs. We've looked at the composition of councils for tertiary institutions. We've indicated that we should review the policy on the appointment of councils to ensure that the right qualified persons with relevant expertise in running tertiary institutions are put on the boards of the institutions to support in the development of the schools. Then also we've underscored the costs in running the councils, and therefore we are calling on central government to step in to support the schools so that they can maybe they can share the burden or the cost in terms of running the councils of the institutions. The true meaning of independence of tertiary institutions, we should limit undue interference of regulatory bodies to allow for proper functioning of our institutions. Then also we've talked about TVET and the challenge in attracting the right persons to serve on the councils. We should broaden the search, ensure that we attract more qualified people to serve on our boards. As indicated or intimated earlier on, we have talked about the role of the district or municipal education oversight committees, and we thought that the assemblies and central government should resource this body which is mandated or responsible for education development in the districts so that they can be more effective. Then also comes the question or the point that the leadership of the DIOCs is chaired by the DC or MC, and we thought that at least we shouldn't make it that way because the DCs or the MCs hardly have time to participate in DIOC meetings, thereby making the DIOCs non-functioning or non-functional. In order to ensure accountability, we are also calling for regular accountability forums to be held between citizens and then the institutions
Then also now involvement of PTAs, we've talked about it, and then we should look at the recomposition of the school management committees. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. I think we are taking it different dimensions. Kindly note down your questions or your input. When we are done with the other presentation, then we just put everything together to beat time so that our
Well, we were tasked to look at educational financing. I'm sure this is an area everybody's so much interested in hearing what we have found out or what solutions we can table for this particular forum in terms of transforming education and making education more sustainable. The challenges we identified in terms of educational financing has to do with issues about delays, issues about inadequacy of funds, and also issues of misapplication and misappropriation of funds. But even there's another level I just thought about also when it comes to educational financing. We don't seem curious. We are looking at government or local resources, but actually we need to broaden our horizon in terms of looking at other sources of funding. Now, in terms of recommendations, one of the key issues the group suggested was to encompass the GAD fund to allow more resources. Currently, we are told that the percentage at the GET fund is around 2.5. You correct me if this figure is, or this percentage is not okay. We also suggested that to make education or educational funding sustainable, we should look at our GDP. In many parts of the world where education is free, where people enjoy education right down from the basic level up to the university level, a lot of the funding is coming from the GDP. And we were suggesting that at least a percentage, especially at the basic level where the foundation of education is being built, should constitute about 2% of the GDP. And this can be negotiated from the rest of the levels. We also talked about the fact that the GET fund, which I mentioned 2.5, yeah, because of the sustainability. Yeah, we also mentioned that the GET fund can move from 2.5% to about 4%. There was also an issue of cost sharing. If you look at the senior or free senior high school system, that parents should provide the uniforms, the feeding, whilst government can take care of the rest of the free SHS, and also do away with the double track system. We also talked about the fact that parents could also contribute in terms of the IGF financing of education. We also talked about the fact that with the current restructuring of the PTA, that would also support in terms of the educational financing. Now, under the innovative financing model to be explored, we discussed that some schools could also attempt venturing into commercial activities. I've often told people that we are so privileged a country like Ghana when you even pour water, like tomatoes water, you don't need to do anything. There's no snow, there's no winter. The next couple of days, you see the tomatoes germinating. And that's the level to which our lands can be very fertile, and we can do many things. We also suggested that we should have an enhanced student loan scheme to support the education instead of depending on the allowance. In fact, it generated a lot of debate. And sadly, I must say, most of us that benefited from the allowance were of the opinion that it is not sustainable. We cannot transform education just to depend on the allowance, but we should look at alternative ways, giving students loans that they will be able to pay, and also to create the jobs so that they will be able to raise the resources to pay for. We also talked about the fact that companies or private sector that are interested in supporting educational activities and sports should be given some sort of tax exemptions at the end of the financial year, so that they are more encouraged to finance our educational system and enjoy the benefits that government would afford to them. We also talked about the fact that we should have a very, we should inculcate or imbibe this culture of maintenance. And some of the resources that we'll be looking for, if we imbibe this culture of maintenance, I think we will save a lot in terms of how we finance our infrastructure. We also talked about the fact that it's very important, and please let us give this particular point a very serious notice. We have a lot of people that are drawing, or we call them drawers of Article 71. If you happen to have an opportunity to talk to those in the financial institutions, there's a lot of money spent on those office holders associated to Article 71. And if we really want to transform an education sector like ours and make it very sustainable, how come that we don't shift the expenditure of this sector to Article 71 and give it the needed attention that it deserves? Now, we also talked about the fact that institutions should start to set up tax or fundraising offices so that people would be specialized or would focus very much on raising funds. It could be locally, externally, and many other places. And finally, we had issues about accountability. We indicated that the internal and the audit service should ensure periodic auditing, which they do, and also public audited accounts regularly. And then we should also leverage on technology to ensure accountability, and proper procurement practices must also be encouraged. In terms of equity and inclusion, we say resource allocation should be proportionally done, even though some schools are category A schools, B schools, C schools. When it comes to the educational financing, we should look at it from a proportional point of view. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our presentation, and we welcome questions.
Thank you so much. Kindly note down your concerns. We shall take the final presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. This is Group 5. Our task was to look at research evidence for decision making. We had a number of thematic areas on this particular important topic to proffer suggestions so that government can adapt to help improve our education sector. The first one had to do with the school placement system. Under that, we had to look at how data can be efficiently managed to improve the computerized school selection placement system, CSSPS. We are of the view that IT officers should be responsible for data collection on this CSSPS at the school level, and the data should be transmitted upward right from the beginning. So we are saying that we have to ensure data accuracy, completeness, and validation in centralized and decentralized databases. And in doing this, we have to ensure that we collect the biodata of the school children at the school level. And that should be done right from the first year. And at that time, we have to give the students unique IDs that will follow them up to the end. Students' location should also be considered in the placement process so that it will address the issue of students being posted or placed in schools, in day schools where they have to look for accommodation before they can attend those schools. We are of the view that at that age, students are too young to have to go and look for accommodation and stay outside of the school premises to have their education. Then there should be priority given to the data security that will be obtained. The data that will be obtained must be secured so that it is protected, since it is people's biodata and is sensitive information about the students. Then we have to define a clear criteria for the placement of students. It appears that currently the placement is shrouded in secrecy. The public do not have clear understanding about how the placement process is done, and that creates a lot of tension in the system. So to achieve this, we have to have transparency in the placement system so that we are all together in this particular exercise. Then we looked at the need for us to have feedback and continuous improvement to that particular system. To achieve this, we have to establish a feedback mechanism where students and parents can report challenges in real time. Then we have to conduct annual system audits of the placement system so that we can identify weaknesses and recommend improvements to the system periodically. Then we engage stakeholders such as education officials, IT experts, and administrators in regular policy review of the placement system so that we can refine the process. The second item on our review was to look at policy level data system and how that can be enhanced. So we're interested in looking at the current gaps in data indicators and management. And we identified the following gaps. There is poor data management across all levels of our educational system. And there is also a gap in data security. The data that we take, there is no security, and that is a serious problem. There is lack of data officers in the schools. The schools do not have people who are dedicated to data. You see a school teacher or ICT teacher who is also responsible for keeping data. We think that particular role has been dualized, and so people should be dedicated to do that particular task. There is also inadequate IT infrastructure, especially in deprived communities, and we need to enhance that to address the gap. There is fragmentation of data at different levels of the structure, and we have to find a way to synchronize the data. Another point we had to look at is how the information and data management systems that we have at the Ministry of Education and its agencies can be improved to offer comprehensive, inclusive, relevant, credible, and timely data for policy management. And we have the following suggestions. We need to invest in robust IT infrastructure for proper data storage, enhance data literacy among staff through CPD activities. Recently, when the computers were distributed to teachers, it was obvious that many teachers did not even know how to use the computer. And that's a serious problem in this age that we are in. So we need to also strengthen data security and integrity, recruit ICT professionals into our schools to be in charge of ICT related activities and the training of teachers when it comes to ICT literacy. Then we have to develop clear data governance policy for all our institutions, especially in our education sector. The third point we had to look at is inclusion. And here we were interested in looking at how real-time data can be used to address disparities in education. 3 suggestions are provided here. 1, we need to have accurate data on infrastructure and personnel across all our educational levels. When we have that, we can now provide equitable distribution of infrastructure and personnel to address these needs. Then there must be real-time data on dropouts, push-outs, and children who have never enrolled in school, so that we can track that data and ensure that we enforce the compulsory nature of our basic education. Then we also looked at how the education sector data can be improved. And this had to do with factors that relate to persons with disability, deprived schools, inclusive and complementary education. On disability, we are suggesting that they should incorporate disability-specific data points in national education databases to track enrollment of disabled people and their retention and achievement in schools. Then we should create disability-friendly learning environment in educational institutions and provide appropriate teaching and learning resources for disability. Then on the issue of deprived schools and complementary education, we are suggesting that there should be complementary basic education agency that would, the complementary basic education agency should be resourced and strengthened nationwide so that they can be effective. Real-time data on perceived deprived schools should be collated and reviewed periodically. Then the fourth point had to do with data accessibility and usage. And we are suggesting that we have to implement centralized digital education dashboard that will provide real-time insight into student performance, teacher effectiveness, and resource allocations. Identify learning gaps and deploy target interventions in under-deprived schools. School management committees, SMCs, and teachers should use digital-based. They should have digital-based student progress tracking systems to monitor attendance, behavior, and academic performance. Then we have to also develop performance improvement plans. Then ethical dissemination of data is also relevant, and stakeholders must be made to obey these ethics. We have to establish a public education data portal where stakeholders can access real-time statistics on data performance, funding, and resource allocations. Then formation of policy learning groups to contribute to policy formulation and provide accountability. Then the last point had to do with research and development. Here we're supposed to look at research and development in institutions, both lower level and tertiary. And we are recommending that government of Ghana funded research in education should be done, and this can be achieved through the establishment of the National Research Fund. The National Research Fund should be clearly defined in purpose and be distinct from the existing book and research allowance, which is meant for academic and research for lecturers for their progression and promotion. The two should not be confused. We should create a platform where research outputs sponsored by the National Research Fund on education can be disseminated and be implemented. Then the last aspect is how the proposed research fund can be operationalized. We are of the view that there should be a clear funding source for the fund, and a clear and transparent disbursement criteria should be established for the fund. There should also be a robust accountability mechanism in the utilization of the disbursed fund. there should be an independent committee to assess research proposals for funding, and the research fund should be operated in decentralized fashion. It should not be centralized and politicized. The fund should be regulated and used for the intended research and development purposes, distinct from the existing book and research allowances. Thank you very much, and we are open to questions.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, our time is up. Please, I'm going to share a link so that we can channel our concerns and other suggestions through. Please kindly send your concerns or questions through nef@gh. On this note, I humbly invite the Vice Chancellor, Tamil Technical University, to give us a brief closing remarks. Thank you very much. Please take over.
Hello. Thank you very much. I want to stand on the existing protocol.
Hi, I'm Richard Amo. About Ghana's education system, there are so many challenges, but then I'll start with the overcrowding in the SHS levels. There are so many students in the SHS levels where the previous government had to introduce a double track, which was good to reduce the numbers. But the problem is you can't solve things temporarily. There has to be permanent solutions, and one is building infrastructure in the various secondary schools. Yes, if there are so many infrastructures, there will be less dependent on the little ones that they have, and then there will be less crowding in the schools. Number two is how the syllables are structured. They are so much compact that sometimes students take it very hard to understand some topics, to understand some things even before exams. So for me, I would think that if the government is able to restructure our syllabus, make it easier for us, and then build more infrastructure, I think Ghana's education will be better and we will move forward as a nation. Thank you.
The Ministry of Education, we want to say thank you for being part of this milestone. Please, if you kindly remain your seats, the finance department is going around. You kindly remain your
seats. Na free education ne de me momo de so mo ka so mbetwa mu o ma ha me aboa me pa me pe na me mo emu ade ha me kakra ye o de se omokwa ne ya sesemu no double track no eno ne me help akese enti sa aban ne betima boa ye wo ho se sa adan ne wo so mu si bika ho e ma nkora ne timi tra school mo se de first ne no mu tra school mu 3 months 4 months no ma ba fie na eno be boa ye pa e ho ne ye problem pa akese double track no munya ho adwuma maye nkora no ko mbetinem ene single track ne nyina ye single track a ke be boa ye pa enti ye be sra aban ne se ye sre na free education di o maintain maye na mom nkora no so wo mo hwe se nkora no ne o wo mu a omo de fa adwuma sua no mu side school no mu a be boa no no omo fa ne fa sa side ho na aboa adwuma sua no enye fon eye pa ye sua adwuma e bi anka ye ma no kora no ke ntimi hwe omo nuru ba bi e aduru no me gina hai me ye sprayer enso me kan ye mba panyini ba bi a wogina wonyi ni yesra ban na yesre no yakoto sre no ade ne de mo ntwam o onya ne ho onkura ne mayen eno a ne hia onkura ne mayen yenim se ba bi tosini enti ba bi etosini no eho na onkura ne mayen onsiesie no na emom ntwamu ne de otwam a ye betwa jaje agu ne so ya no ato
Pacho midin di nok boatin auto mechanic. There how many say
our education mun say your teachers for no say bo mo ho ban pa because they have me no na say bi yet say omuka news omuka say boys school for nkra omuko school second show teacher ni kwatia no school ni na yi second no e da wo teacher ni nani ba ne de ye nka ho asem ba teacher ni bi nko bo akra bi ma na chie papa ye beka ba teacher for no a ye wo mo say bo mo ban and ye say mo ye ntia akra wo school nti di akra pe e na oye no wo school sa de no mo ka ne de me no mo nya adwen kra adentina akra ko school na waye bone na ye tia na ye say ma ye ntia no ye besu adwuma no na ye mistake ya anasa one man ten kra na ye master e panish akra no adentina akra no no ba besu ade teacher ni no ba be kire na ade no wadi bone ye say ma panish no enti mesre Ghana ba mesre education for say sa de na omode aba ne de me menya komunyi free school mu kra say ma panish nkra no say omutwam na akra mistake ye panish no send your mother you beton to say ebi akra no ye bone ye be panish ye be ni say ya e be boa man kra na eden ayi because na kra no be ko school a sekan scammer show mu botom blade ne sak ayi nema no ene apaso ni na show mu botom because me why no oko school nya boxing no okobo no nya magazine aduma no okoye no adenti na wo ko school na wo de sekan ana apaso show botom na teacher ni ono kire wade o kire wade no okoya de no ko ka na wo koyi di akwo teacher ni ani ade we